with this complete. So, as I was saying, the today's topic is very unique in the term of topic and as well as in the terms of speaker. So, the topic wise, this is the topic which we all practice. We want to do research. We also practice science, but at the same time, this is probably not done in the way it should be done. So, it is also an art to practice science, art to do research. And I think we will spend some time today reflecting back on the journey of how to do a good science and good research. And the topic is also equally important because of the speakers. So these two speakers are the young, dynamic speakers and motivated, and already they were part of the team in Singapore, but now they have kind of moved on to their respective journeys. And these two students, these two fellows who came here to learn, but probably by the end they left, they taught us more about both science and research. And therefore, though they were my mentees, but eventually at a lot of stages, I have to get mentored by them as well. So this itself can speak about how good they are in their profession of both science and research. It's just not about dedication, it's about how they pursue and how they pursue in a very nice way. So for those who are attending, this is a real treat to learn from these two very young gentlemen, both William and Carlos, how they think about research, how they shape the research. And I'm sure in future you will have to book an appointment with them and you will be very, very difficult. You maybe you can reach out to me to get a recommendation, but I don't know whether I will get an appointment with them. But I think today, good that we have both of them together. And thanks. It's early morning in Colombia. So I welcome both Carlos and William from Colombia to speak to us. So the stage is yours, William and Carlos, both of you.
Thank you, Dr. Rupesh, for your generous introduction. I'm truly happy to be here and to see how this community of lecture series in Breton has been growing over time and the consistency that we have kept for the last few months. And I think it's very nice to see so many familiar faces. And I feel like this is a safe place to share ideas and to grow as a academic community. So thank you for inviting us to give this lecture. It's very difficult because, as you said, we are here in front of our mentors, and it's from the people that we've learned everything about research. So we hope to give some kind of summary of what we learned so far, and also to share a bit of our experience. So basically, what we will present is when you ask for this topic, and science of research, we thought, okay, like how to address this topic. So let's do it the way we know how to do things, that is doing research. So that was the first thing that we did. Let's look for the definition of art and science. Let's do research. And when you go to a dictionary, you see that art is defined as the making of objects, images, music, etc., that are beautiful or that express feelings. So I think this definition fits with what research is, right? Like with making objects, we're creating projects, we're creating also manuscripts, and those manuscripts have to be beautiful because we need to get them accepted and published, but are also expression of feelings and also expression of let's say a natural phenomena that we're trying to show to the academic community. It's also an activity through which people express particular ideas, and I think that's also a perfect fit for research because it's where we are putting our hypotheses that are ideas about a topic that we are doing research on, right? So I think the definition of art fits in the definition of research as well. Then we went to science, and I think science has everything to be with research. It's like a kind of synonym. But the definition of science in the dictionary is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained, and also is defined as knowledge of any kind. So I think science, it's also a perfect fit for the definition of research. So when we see the art of research, from the definition that we just said before, it applied because this means creativity, right? In which we do formulation of novel questions, generating new hypotheses, and seeing connections that others are missing. It's also about interpretation, how we choose the frame of problem, how we present the findings, how we craft the narratives around the results. It's also the expression, right? How we communicate the research through the writing, the visuals, and here, for example, I just discovered recently seeing Carlos's visuals and all the diagrams that he does in BioRender. That is also an artistic work, right? If we want our papers to look good, if we want to communicate our ideas in a clear way, we need to be able to do this kind of images, this kind of figures, and all this require time and creativity. It's also about how we express in our presentations in ways that we can pursue, inspire, and also move audiences. And it's also about adaptability, right? In research, often it involves like a lot of incomplete data, uncertainty. So it's the art in making this judgment, adjusting the approaches, and also innovating in our techniques. So in short, the art of research is about creativity, expression, and the human touch behind inquiry. And the science of research, based on the definition, will mean one, the methodology and the rigor, right? We require structured methods. We need to know about how to design an experiment. We need to know about the type of studies. We need to know what is the type of statistical analysis that we need to perform if we want to answer a specific question with the data available. We need to be very rigorous in collecting our data, in applying those statistics, and also in following the established protocols. Also, the science of research is about evidence-based process, right? We need to test our ideas against the observable evidence. It's about objectivity, right? We need to ensure that our findings are reliable, are replicable, and not just based on a personal opinion. And this will ensure that the outcomes are replicable, right? That's one of the objectives of science, that other scientists are able to replicate our experiments. And it's also about discipline and structures. So we know that research is a field of knowledge that thrives on precision, on clarity, and systematic inquiry. So the science of research is about methods, rules, and this systemic investigation. So when we bring these together, we could say that without science, research would lack of rigor, and without art, it would lack imagination and impact. So together, they make a perfect like valid and are both valid and valuable, and we could say that these are the main characteristics from each. So for art, creativity, interpretation, expression, and from science was methodology, evidence-based, and discipline. So from my personal experience, so now I will give some advice from our experience with Carlos, but also the advice from a senior artist, and then Carlos will share his own experience. So, from my personal experience, what are the needs for good research? So, the first thing that we need to know is that good research takes time because ideas do not come from the spontaneous generation, right? Like we learned from Pasteur, there is a source, right, of microbe. The same happened with ideas. We need to cultivate ideas. Good research also needs mentors, and that's why I consider this kind of spaces and also this kind of meetings are helpful for us because it they give us um, like a shortcut because we can leverage on the experience of our mentors to come out with new ideas, with innovative methods, but also it helps us to guide our research in the more rigorous way. Also, good research requires commitment, and this is something very important for the mentees because in our days, right, like nowadays, we want everything to be fast, like like social media. We want to get the paper published quickly. We want to get our statistical analysis performed really fast, but I've seen that to do good research, we really need to commit and we need to be very patient in our results, in our process, and to keep the rigor that it requires. Also, it's important to know that it's never too late and it's never too early. And there are good examples of people that have started their path on research, after they become ophthalmologists or even subspecialists, uveitis specialists, or even when they were, I would say, like advanced in their careers, that they decided to do a PhD. So, for example, Dr. De La Torre, that is one of our mentors in Colombia, she started her research career after she had already done all her clinical training, and she started her PhD when she was around 40 years old. And it's never too early. We can see people from the very beginning of their medical school at first semester that they are barely 16 or 17 years old, starting doing projects that later on can become like very impactful projects. Good research, sorry, requires team building, and this is also important because um, some years ago it was more common to see like publications with only one author or two authors from people that they were scientists and they dedicate their lives to be in the lab to discover new things by themselves. But nowadays, the knowledge is so complex that I think it requires for an expertise in different fields, and a single person cannot achieve that. We need to bring to the table people from different disciplines like engineer, chemistry, physics, like biology, computational biology, of course, the thematic experts in ophthalmology and medicine. But if we really want to do a real advance in the current situation of knowledge, we need to build those teams with different backgrounds so we can leverage on all the experiences to solve the different problems that we're facing nowadays. Um, it's also important to know that good research requires good management skills for the same reason, like knowledge has become so complex and there is a vast amount of sources, knowledge. So if we don't have these skills, it's very possible and probable that we start a project and we never finish it. And I've seen that happen in many of the medical students that they start very like with all the energy and they seem to be very involved. But later on, when they don't see the results to come very quickly, they will lose that motivation. So we need to know that we need to manage those kind of resources, and for that, the management skills are critical. It's also important to know that no one is born experienced, so it's a process, right? It's like when we learn how to walk, we first have to crawl, then we need to, and then walk, and then we will be running. So the same happened with research and with art, right? We first need to do our first drafts, our first sketches of our drawings, and then we will get experience. That's why the first paper is always I would say, the most significant, right? Even though if it's only a case report, I still remember my first case report, how difficult it was for me. And then after some time of practicing, learning some new methods, the research will become easier. And it's the same for a painter, right? Or any artist, that the art will become easier. Sometimes you need to know when to step down. And I think this is one of the very difficult things for researchers because in my personal experience, I think researchers in general are very stubborn. They want the project to be finished, but sometimes the conditions, like the experiment was not designed in the proper way beforehand, or the results are showing us that probably we're in the wrong path. And sometimes we just need to step down. We need to quit on that idea. And there is not point on keeping trying and trying. And it's important to discover in a proper, like in the right time when to step down a project, because this can consume the time for focusing in other projects that are important as well. So when I thought, okay, let's see what is the advices from a good artist for scientists. So when you think about a good artist, Leonardo da Vinci is, I think, a very good example, right? And there is a book in which Leonardo da Vinci advised to artists. And in this book, Emery Kellen, that is the editor and annotator for the book, he used some of the minutes of Leonardo da Vinci about his observations, scientific knowledge, and day-to-day experience that they had in their notebooks and also their own drawings to build this book. Um, One thing that is important in the introduction is that everyone is an artist, and I can say that everyone is a scientist because we born with that in our, like in our mindset, in our instinct. Um, when you see a child, they are discovering literally nature, right? That's why they ask so many questions. Why the water is blue? Why the sky is blue? Why the sun is yellow? Like why this happened this way? So they are very curious because they are by nature scientists. By nature, they have that curiosity. And that's why many times you will hear that the advice is like think as a child, right? Like think as if you were a child. And it's only a matter of training. It's only a matter of keep this inner child alive so we can keep ourselves curious. And so some of the advices that Leonardo da Vinci gives to the artist, I think, are also compatible with the art and science of research. So the first is observe nature relentlessly. So he said, go to nature, be ruled by her. So when he saw nature as an ultimate teacher, and I think the same happened in the medical practice. We have been taught always that our patient is the better classroom, right? Or our patient is the better book. And it's because we need to observe the nature, like how the disease behaves. We cannot only do research on images. We cannot only do research in clinical charts. We need to see the patient to see how the disease is evolving, how the treatment is how the treatment is achieving its goal of getting the cure or slowing down the inflammation, etc. So we need to really go back to nature and understand the really basics. And I would say that in medicine, the nature also it's about observing the biochemistry, like the fundamental structure of the cell to remember how this interaction, for example, between cells is happening so we can have an idea of what could be the mechanisms that are behind a clinical presentation or a clinical response for a treatment. So one of the sentences was the painter who copies nature becomes the painter of things, not the painter of ideas. And I think it's about how you can materialize those ideas into a concrete thing. uh, Also, there was an advice of draw constantly, and because it was for artists. But I also remember from, for example, Dr. Del Torre and also Dr. Rupesh to keep notes of all the things that you're doing, and that was always the advice. Like if you're doing an experiment, you need to take notes. You need to know what you've done so far. You need to track. Like you need to track the advance of your project. And also, I think it's a good idea to keep a notebook to write down those novel ideas that you cannot develop at this stage, but probably in the future you can do, because sometimes ideas can go on fly and you will forget. So it's good to have this notebook, like this will help you to also revert back into your own ideas and to help you to develop those skills of good thinking, like to keep your engine very oiled. So make a habit of drawing from memory and also from sketch it rapidly on the spot. That was the advice of Da Vinci for the artists, but I think it also applies for research. Avoid formula and seek understanding. And I think this is also important because sometimes when you just dedicate yourself to do mechanical work, like only to do characterizations, to do something that is, um, I would say, like swimming in the surface, you will miss the opportunity to understand what is really happening in the problem that you're trying to address. So he said, the painter who draws only by practice and by eye without reason is like a mirror which copies everything placed in front of it without being conscious of their existence. And I think this also applies for research. We need to be very critical, and we need to try to develop that research that is helping us to move the boundaries of knowledge a little bit, right? We want to see the mechanistic phenomena that is going behind the clinical presentation. So I think this is a good advice about how we should avoid those formulas, those mechanical way of doing things, and seek for really understanding. Then practice and perseverance. Da Vinci always reminded artists not to rush, to be careful, layer work, like to go very deep in what they were doing. And he also stressed revisiting and finish works with fresh eyes, since true mastery unfolds over time. So this is also important because in Colombia, I remember we had a lot of um, how we call them, like dead projects. And sometimes Dr. Alejandro always said, like, okay, let's try to bring this project alive again after 1 year or 2 years. And there were projects that were unfinished by other colleague, and we try to see those projects with fresh eyes. And sometimes we turn into a really interesting project that end up being published, or that really contribute to answering a question that was created before. So I think it's important to keep this practice of patience and perseverance. And the sentence that they said is, iron rusts from disuse, water loses its purity from stagnation, even so does inaction sap the vigor of the mind. Mm. And then another advice, and I think this is the last one, is cultivate imagination. I think art, it's all about creativity, right? About bringing innovation in the paintings. And he also advised artists to look at the clouds, the stains, and cracked walls, and let the mind invent new landscape and forms from them. So that's the idea. If you have a source of inspiration, try to do something novel. And I think creativity can be trained, and should be trained, right? And I think that's also reasons why researchers should not only focus in a single topic and be like a monofocal. They should have different sources of inspiration. Sometimes inspiration comes not only from reading in the books, but also from interacting with the patients, from going to the lab, from seeing the nature. And I think that helps us to cultivate the imagination. And now I give it to Carlos so he can share with us his own experience.
Thank you so much, William. Thank you, everybody that is here. And my from my side, I will show you some of the examples and like real life experience that we have with William and with all the research teams. And I will show you my favorite papers that we have done during several years of working on research, and also having a lot of difficulties, but also a lot of success, I could say. For starting, this is my first paper in all of them. It was related to ocular cicatricial pemphigoid, and I would say that even though it's a disease that some of us will see, or some of us we will don't know, the characteristic of this disease is that it's very aggressive and have a lot of burden on vision of the patients. And I could say that one day I was in clinic with Dr. Alejandra, and she just asked me, what is the epidemiology or the prevalence or incidence of the disease in worldwide? And from that question, we start looking, and we see that there were no reports of that information in our setting in South America. And based on that, we start looking for how to create to see where we can find the source of information to estimate this epidemiology of the disease. And as you see in the left side, there is a drawing of a kid that is just starting to learn how to draw. And I feel that day I was that kid because at that time we don't have any statistical statisticians or epidemiologists that was all the time with the research group. We were mainly a research group based on students and Dr. Alejandra. And that days, with what we have, we use Excel, we use very fundamental, I would say, programs for research that at that time was the best of what we can do. And because of that, I show you that that days the figures were looking like this, not very professional, but these are good. Makes me remember a lot of good things when we were learning how to what is a prevalence and incidence, and from the basics concepts we move to the next, please, to learn how to paint, how to draw, how to analyze, how to make everything. I think in research is not only having the most beautiful paper since the very beginning, and it's not only having the most impactful paper since the first idea. Is a process, is learning, and all the days you will try new techniques. And because of that, in the left side, you can see that there are a very different types of paints that you can use in any type of superficies, but you will need to know where to use each one, because it's not the same to draw in paper that draw in other materials, like in walls or drawing in a specific with some specificness that the texture or the material needs. So it's very important that with time and efforts, like giving the value to what we do, we will learn how to use all of this. But this just require time. Then after a lot of mistakes and learnings, we will be able to know when I have to use colors, when I have to use aquarellas, or when I have to use other types of paintings. Yes. So if I could say, when I come to Singapore, I was just knowing how to use Jamovi and a little bit of R. Now that I came back, I know how to use in a very good way the R, Python, and also seeing that a new world, because that is how I can describe Singapore for me. How the science moves in a very aesthetic but also a rigorous path. I learned that you don't need also to have too much skills on this statistical analysis, but you statistical analysis of words, but you also need to learn how to make your paper looks beautiful, and also how to make that the ideas that you are putting on it are enough clear to the readers, but also for the reviewers. Next, then it comes when you when I think I we achieve, because this was mainly a work from all of the group. We achieve a certain experience to build a beautiful painting or a beautiful article, I could say, where we see a problem in general, and was something that was very nice at that days, because usually you in UIDs field, you see that there is many difficultness in terms of how to grade and how to make objectively the grading of the cells in anterior chamber. Because of that, sometimes is you see that not most of the clinical trials, or none of them, use the anterior segment cellularity counting as a objective marker of improvement, and also they don't use it as an outcome in the measurements of the use of different therapies. But then, with a huge team, with a lot of efforts from Dr. Rupesh, our AI team, and also from us, we build a good story, because that's other thing, and that's when you see that the research became like a painting when you have a good story to tell, and that's something that I always listen to William to said is important. And after all of this, like combination of expertise, talent, and ideas, this became a very good paper that we hope will change too many things that are nowadays a limitation for most of the research. And this is something that from that when I was doing these slides, I was thinking how from a very basic and very hard work from to see for information for the estimate the prevalence or see the epidemiology of a disease. We come from there, and we now are doing so many interesting papers on AI. William, Dr. Rupesh are the heads of these amazing projects that are now accepted or published. So I think it's a matter of time. Nothing comes easy, and also everything takes the time that need to takes. No, you cannot try to rush to find very huge things, but sometimes you will have some deadlines, and for to be prepared to that, you have to start working very early and never give up from the problems, because I think all the careers, all the research, all the paintings have problems, and also sometimes this comes to the black side, to the black space where no one wants to see, but then you have to take out the dust and take it again and make it a beautiful painting or a beautiful paper for the readers, and also that change something, that impact in something. Next, please. And this is the last example of how an story was built. So also the same question on clinic. What is the incidence and prevalence of the scleritis in our setting? Nobody of us knows. Usually North America have a lot of reports, and US, India, China have very good reports. But when we go for our setting, we see that there is a lack of this type of information. And then we take this a similar methodology to identify where we can find the source of information and try to go for this uh, respond to this question. But what is most important was to give this information and to see how this could change something. And for us was very interesting that in general, if you check in all the literature, at that time there were too much questions related to the epidemiology of the disease. That's why, next, please, we put on uh, this finer or this structure to evaluate an idea. And I think is the most important part in from my side, because you can have many ideas, but what you have to check on them if they are feasible, if you have the required expertise, the facilities and resources, because sometimes you dream a lot, but for that dreaming you have to have many different points like resources in order to go for that idea. And when you are not realistic since the beginning, you can overcompromise, and then you will have a lot of more failures that you will have if you do it with all of these resources. So the first step is always to see the feasibility or the feasible, if it's feasible or not, the idea that you want to go for. Then you go for the to see if the idea is interesting and the people will change something or will give any information that no one have previously published. That's something important, even though like it's like most of the reports that are done in these main settings that are the US, Europe, Asia, India, that are huge on research. But for like settings like our, we see that there are a lack of investigation. So sometimes have the response or see what is the if there is any change or differentness in the disease that we are seeing here from what they have, that would be enough, very novelty, a good question. One example of this was when we see, for example, in this paper of scleritis, that most of the cases were focusing in a specific region of our country. For you to know, we have too many races. Like we're a mixture of all the races of the world have come here to South America, and we are very mixed in terms of our genetic background. And because of that, some of these variations makes that we have a little bit less prevalence or incidence of the disease. However, we see that in a specific region where most of the Europeans comes and establish here, the frequency of this disease were very, very high. So based on that, we build an story, and we see that there is a predisposition on this type of races, but also we see that there is like there is where there is where we need to put the resources in order to prevent, or sometimes it's not feasible, no, it's not possible to prevent, but to focus on where is need some specific experts on this field in the country. Then continue with the thinner is the novelty. I think we will the best papers are the ones that always give you something new, even though sometimes it's a matter of interpretation or a combination of multiple information that you will see. So the novelty will be an important target. However, sometimes you will see that right now, due to like the huge amount of papers that are now publishing in all the places, these characteristics are being maybe losing, and sometimes is more a title rather than the information that they have. Next point is the ethical aspects. You and us, like, I think all of us have a very clear ethical perspective on what is good to do, what is not good to do, and that we have to respect all the rights of our patients, and we don't have to move that boundaries in order to respond a question. If we have to do that, we need to go back and see how do we like structure the idea in a different way. But that's something that is very relevant, that is very important at this stage. And finally, relevant. How this will advance the field, how this question will give a solution for something. I think, and that's something that thanks Dr. Rupesh, and thanks we have the opportunity to go to Tsinghua with Dr. Tien Wong. He always said that the question must be novel, but also will respond to something that is very important for most of the population. So that's something that always keep in my mind now that we start projects or we look for ideas. It's really relevant, or we're like putting a lot of resources in something that maybe will not give us a very like something with these two characteristics. Next. In order to continue and finalize, these are the very last slides. We see that in the papers, usually there were no populational-based study, and at that time in incidence and prevalence of scleritis. This was like in 2010. Next. Then an update on a book that is Cornea in 2021. And they also show that the incidence and prevalence of scleritis in general population is not known, and that was something that for us was like, okay, the research idea is feasible with the approach of a systematic review, is important, and will give a solution to many questions. So based on this, we start, this is my master thesis. So we start working on them, and we're at the very beginning, where not too much people, but we always read the papers of one person that I have the opportunity to meet and work with, that was Prof. James Rosenbaum. And he always published a lot of on this field, and he have put this very nice editorial in Arthritis and Rheumatology, where he said that a good detective never miss a clue why the epidemiology of scleritis deserve our attention. And he put this example of Conan Doyle, and also he gave many nice examples of how to look for this. And this was too much inspiration at that time to build and start like go for this question with all the research team. So next, please. Uh, Thanks. At that time, we start in 2021, I think, or 2022. At that moment, there were not too much information, but we managed to be like see for information in very different settings. And at the very beginning was in the left side, as you can see, Dr. Alejandra and the research team and I working on this idea. But then we meet Dr. Rupesh and we invite him to give his expertise on this field. And he gave us a lot of feedback and good comments in order to improve. And finally, thanks to Dr. Rupesh, Dr. Rosenbaum was connected and included in this paper, and he gave us like the final details. And this paper have an special, uh, like an special remember something that I remember a lot in my mind is that more or less we have more than 20 iterations, a revision of the paper just by Dr. Rosenbaum, but the outcome was enough good that we have very few comments, and the reviewers, even though give us too much congratulations for the paper, but I think this was one of the most insightful papers that we have worked in, because teach us that sometimes rushing for an publication will give you the publication eventually. You just need to try and try and try, resilience. But then it comes how much you are giving at the attention to the paper, and how much is good, how if it's good enough to go for a good journal. And that's something that I think I have not not because Dr. Rosenbaum tell me, but I have learned from the amount of iterations that this paper have, was that you have to check and check and check, and sometimes when you don't have any comment, you have to give a look again, because always there are something to improve in all the papers. So you cannot like give up with the very first bad comments, because even though they're not trying to or to give you like to don't motivate you, but you have to take this as learning and to improve every day, because at the end, research is that if you want to give a good idea, you have to work a lot in terms of improving and improving. And finally, when you see that the paper is good, this is smoothly, you will have to say, as he said, that the perfect is enemy of the good things. So let's submit. And that was a very, very nice comment that we received by email from him, that at that time was very nice to listen that he approved for the first time a paper that we work together. Right now we have more papers, but yes, that's something that I always keep in mind, and I think this talk led me to share a little bit with you some of this experience that I have had in Singapore, but also in Colombia, and how most of the things are connected and linked, and this is like a nice experience to have research always give you so much happiness, but as my mentor Dr. Alejandra says, is 90% effort, 10% success. So is that next? Just to conclude, and this is mainly something that I learned from Dr. Rupesh. He always give us and drawings in the mornings when we were having coffee, and he talks about the 5 E's. But I include I take his ideas and I include some additional things. That in research you always have to have patience and curiosity. That's something that you cannot build in. It's very difficult to build in someone. So usually the people that likes research have that characteristics by itself, passion and curiosity. Then proactivity and ownership. You always have to give the best of you in every project, and you have to feel the things are you are the owner of that things, because if no one will do the things better than you can do it, even though you need to delegate and give the ideas to someone that can work on them. You always have to have this ownership to make a very critical review and improve the work that you are doing. Collaboration and mentorship is the most important, because you always are going to see that the collaboration are very, very important for the research and for moving forward the field. And the mentorship is something that we always need. We need someone that tell us what to do, because sometimes we are blind and we don't know what to do, but we have a lot of ideas. Resilience always are going to be the one of the most important characteristics. You need to think on how that every comment is not a bad comment. Every comment is just a suggestion to improve. And that's the perspective. Then you will don't have to be angry when you make the revision of your paper. Balance between art and science. So you have to be creativity. You have to have a lot of creativity, but you have to have a lot of rigor. You have to check and double check and see that what you are saying is consistently with the literature, but also with your results. And finally, find a way to have a global perspective. I think we have, when we were in Colombia, we have a global perspective in terms of that we read huge authors, and because of that, I remember that the day that I have my interview at TTSH with Dr. Rupesh, the personnel of HR was telling me, but why do you want to come to here to Singapore? You are okay in Colombia, like what why do you think is good to go? And I said, I want to work with Dr. Rupesh. And I think I never missed with that comment, because I learn a lot, and thanks to him I get a lot of new perspective on research and ideas in my life. So finally, last one is just a reflection that Willie, can you put the last one? It's just a reflection that your life have many pathways, many routes to take, but you are the unique person that is the owner of this, or where to go. Yes. So no, there are no wrong decisions in terms of if you are doing the things correctly, but if you go for one, maybe, and this is something that I'm learning, you have to take one and move there until you come to the next step. So thank you so much for your time and for listening us. It was very nice. Thank you, Dr. Rupesh. Thank you, Proton, for all the support, and also always the guidance in all the steps of this amazing talk, and in what you have given me to my life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really love the talk by both you and William. I think very different perspective than regularly what we hear. Just opening up for any comments or any kind of queries from anyone on the call. Anyone like to kind of ask any questions to William or Carlos, or any particular comment? You can unmute
I feel
yourself.
that
Then tell. Sir,
I feel
JB
to
sir.
do the research. I feel to do the research, you need to love the research and enjoy the research. It's not like somebody has told you to do it and you do it. You should love and enjoy the research. Otherwise, you won't be, you will get burnt out or dried up.
Yeah, I think that's a very valuable advice, and I've seen Dr. Biswas doing the research from 99 when I was there, and he will just love it. He'll just love it. It is not like because he want to do it. He just love that research, and he still love that research. So I think it's like so many things to learn from him. So thanks, sir, for being my mentor for the researcher. He always used to say, Rupesh, you should present, just not focus on the presentation, but try and publish. I think a lot to learn from him. Yes. Anyone else? Any other comment or query? Uh, I'm sure all of you had different experiences. Someone want to kind of unmute and tell about their own experience?
Yeah, thank you, Rupesh, for
Sir. Yes, sir.
attending the invitation. Thanks. Nice meeting Carlos and William. And my fellow is also listening. I hope he can ask you some questions. Dr. Oakham, he's in the hospital. I just left. So thank you so much. And I think Vishwas, you are mentor for Rupesh. Now Rupesh is our honorary research teacher for me and my team. So thanks to Rupesh for that and introducing to Proton. And I stayed 10 days in Singapore and met Carlos and William, and not only William, the entire team. And it's amazing. Rupesh is created. I don't know whether you have seen it, but amazing team and amazing work. Lots to do in ophthalmology, and I'm glad Rupesh is adding a drop in the ocean, but it's a very important drop. Thank you, Rupesh. Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, William. Wonderful. Lots to learn from you people, and I feel like I'm the same age like you to learn. So that's what I'm doing with Rupesh daily now. Thank you, JB, for always encouraging me to do something different. And we are happy we are having a mini research lab. We are working with Rupesh weekly and also creating a team now. And one day when it's little better, we will have you as our to visit us as a mentor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Or I wanted to kind of ask maybe William and Carlos. So you portrayed a good picture about the research, and I'm sure. What is one thing you will not do in research? Can you say one thing you will probably not do in research? You said many things we will do in the research, but anything you will say, okay, I will never do in research. Carlos?
I think based on the way I think in life and like my principles, I will never uh, accept something that is not true or is not said by the result. So I think sometimes we fight with them, but they are like they are, and we have to accept and we have to build a story around them. But something that is not real or something that is not truth or not double check, maybe something that I will never let move or pass from my revision. Yeah.
Great. William?
Yes, I think after been doing research for the last like formally and professionally the last 4 years, but I started when I was a med student. I've been doing research for the last 7 or 8 years. And I think something that I promised to myself was not to embrace in research that is not meaningful for patients. Like I would never, and I hope that's something that I really hope is not to lose the focus on what is important. Sometimes it's easy to engage into wrong practices, when your driver is only the publication, where your driver is only ego or money, or you have a very bad driver. It's very easy to be tempted to commit into, like very bad practices. So something I hope I never do is to lose the focus on what is important. And it should be to transfer the way we do medicine and how we impact into patients' health. So that's something I hope I will never do, to lose the focus on what is important and what really matters.
Absolutely. So I think these are really lots of things to learn, and I'm sure all of you know a lot. And research teaches us every day. Every day, one of the things which I never do, besides everything, do not compromise on the data quality, do not compromise on the quality of research, and all kind of stuff. One of the thing which I love and I make sure in the research, and which sometimes is tricky, is means one is the hygiene factors, and I never give up in the research. So a lot of times we give up in the research, so there will be bad days if you really believe in that. So most of the days I start fresh, very nice, excited. End of the day is stopping. Oh, paper got rejected. This application got rejected. Patient is not recruited. 101 things comes to mind. But next day again start with that. Again, end of the day end with a thing. Next day again start with that. I used to love one slide by Dr. Biswas, JB sir, whether you have that still slide. When you used to present about immunosuppressive therapy in uveitis, you have that ostrich picture with the snake, and then you have always said that never give up on management of uveitis patient. So I do the same thing for the patients here is like I don't give up when it's coming to the research. I continue. But again, I take William's advice also, which is very valuable, is that sometimes if you have to really go into that and if it's not correct or it's something not a good question, then you should drop it also. Should not be too stubborn and should not be too stuck with a certain idea which is not going to fly. So that is also one thing which we need to learn. Anyway, Chitranjan, you have a comment or question?
Yes, sir. I have a question for both
Please.
Carlos and William. Whether the research topic is influenced by your mentor or you are always having a free mind. For example, Dr. Rupesh is the mentor. So uveitis, trauma, and
contest photo, autofluorescence, FFA, OCT after visual fields at presentation. Then 1 week, 1 month, 3 months. So you put all instead of putting everything.
I think
I think
What happens
we
first,
need
you
to
can say
mute
post
Dr.
get
Padma.
instituted elsewhere, and patient showed worsening with systemic steroid should come up in
This is
that.
the life of a
Then you
researcher,
put one slide.
clinics and research.
Vision,
Lot of times I'm running the clinic, a research question comes to my mind. And then running the research, a clinical thing comes to mind. This is a typical life. So this is a good example, live example of
not only for sleep apnea,
what
but the
a
body
researcher
mass
goes through.
index.
It's so
Other
difficult to
parameters also you have to
compartmentalize, right,
cover in
Chitranjan?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So this is the
then
good
what
example.
happens
So
You've seen that live.
yeah, I think
discussion
Madam
is
is unmuted to ask a question,
bottom
then
spot.
she got busy with the clinics. So like my question was like whether it is always influenced by your mentor or which lab you are in, or to be very
And
specific, like
discussion how to
William
put
and
nothing
Carlos
is
get a idea about say corneal stem cells or something related to surgical retina or say neuro-ophthalmology. So how do you prioritize, or you get focused to only what your mentor, your lab is busy with or is meant for, or you sideline these, or you entirely neglect the other subspecialties or the ideas?
I can start. Thank you so much, Doctor. I think at the very beginning, the most important, like the good way to do it is to listen to your mentor ideas and embrace them as yours. Like take it from them to you and explore and learn and practice on them. But I think right now, with the time and with Dr. Rupesh and with Dr. Alejandra, with more confident in terms of what we can do, what we cannot do, there were some freedom in terms of the topic, even though and I feel that's something that we share, William and me, we really like uveitis and ocular immunology. So we move in that way, but I think it's a matter of time for you to have the experience in order to build your own questions and go for the need for the story, rather than sometimes they will give you some advice on how to move, but then I think they usually both share that characteristic that they let us think in our ideas, and if we fail, it's okay because at least it's a try. So it's something like that, but I think it's a matter of time.
Thanks, Carlos. William, yeah.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think I have always said that you should be very careful in choosing your mentors, because I said this like ironic, but mentors are very dangerous because they can change your life. Um, when I was in med school, I wanted to be a surgeon, like a chest surgeon. And then I decided to become an ophthalmologist because of Dr. De La Torre mentorship. And like in med school, no one knows what's the uvea, where is it located, like you barely know where is the eye and that you have two. But suddenly we graduated as med students, and we knew a lot of uveitis and all this stuff that is very uncommon. And thanks to that, we were able to work with Dr. Pesh, who we know is a very well known uveitis specialist. So I think it comes from the mentors, like the ideas that you start working on, but you also build up on the skills like an architect, right? You know how to do the sketch, how to do the drawings, how to design, and then you can start exploring your own interests. And I think that's something that has been very special in our both particular paths. For example, in the case of Carlos, he started doing research in uveitis and specific topics, but he developed very strong skills in epidemiology that has allowed him to broaden his field of action, right? Like he now work in other topics. He apply his methods in other kind of specialties. And in my case, my interest has been lately on digital health and artificial intelligence, data science. So I were able to develop those skills, right? I did my master's in data science and I applied that in the data set in Proton. We got several publications in AI. So I think it's a mix of both, like you find a good mentor that will teach you the skills that will help you to refine your own skills. And then you start with those skills and all the knowledge that you have gathered to explore your personal interests. And with that, you build on your own profile kind of thing. And then you can apply that in other fields that are of your interest.
Thank you so much. And I think these are great. And I'm sure we can continue on this thing. But I wanted to end this not before I shared one of my acronym, because I love acronym and I think you've heard many acronyms. So for research, my acronym is R stands for relevance. You have presented that about relevant research. So identify a relevant problem and do that. E stands for has to be ethical. E is for ethical research. Make sure that you do always ethical research. S is for systematic approach, systematically, not necessarily has to be systematic review, but an approach has to be systematic approach and a methodological approach. So, and then E again, there stands for evidence-based. So you have to make sure that it is evidence or experience-based, but I will mostly go for evidence-based thing where you do literature review. And RESE, A will stands for analysis. So it's very important that you do a good analysis, whether it is a descriptive or analytical statistics or whatever statistics is there. It is extremely important that analysis has to be done well, whether you use R or SPSS or etc. That's a different thing. But the broad thing is that S thing is important. And then R again stands for rigor. You need to be very good. You need to be robust with your analysis and accurate, reproducible, precision need to be there. R rigor. And last two things are very important. The C and H. C is the art where it is communication. So through your language, through your figures, you communicate well and nice to everyone. And last is H. H has to be holistic research. So it's not very, though you focus on a very small topic. If you would have seen the papers written by William, Carlos, and our team, is always we give a broad message that through a particular focal thing, how do you kind of give a broad message, whether it is through choroidal vascularity or through anything, how do you give a broad message? So it has to focus on the holistic approach. So I'll share with you in the group a short write-up I've done on this research acronym in case if you want to adopt to it. But once again, on behalf of the team Proton, we'd like to thank William and Carlos for all the efforts for building Proton to what it is today, for giving the Proton a life and setting up this lecture series again and again coming on this forum as a talk. So you are now the Protonoids, definitely you're the part of the Proton team always and always ever. And we look forward for your mentorship now. Now you're no longer mentees, you have to step into the role of mentors. So thank you, William and Carlos, and thank you everyone for spending your time and listening to us. Thank you once again. Okay, have a good evening, good day.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kajal. Bye.